The war had lasted 7 years. 7 long years of fire and death between Earth and the Valorian Empire. Millions had died on both sides. Cities had burned. Ships had exploded in the cold darkness of space. And now, finally, it was over. The peace came with a price. Daniel Carter stood in his small room aboard the human battleship Horizon. He was 32 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too much death. His hands were rough from years of work. His body carried scars from battles he tried to forget. He was a pilot, one of the best in the human fleet. He had destroyed 14 Valorian warships during the war, and now he had been chosen for something he never wanted. The message had come 3 days ago. The human government and the Valorian High Council had agreed to a political marriage. One human would marry one Valorian. It would show both species that peace was real. It would bind the two peoples together. Daniel had laughed when he first heard about it. What fool would agree to marry an alien? The Valorians were cold creatures. They stood 7 feet tall with silver blue skin and strange eyes that changed color like liquid metal. They did not smile. They did not laugh. They saw humans as weak and primitive. Then Daniel learned that he was the fool. The Valorians had chosen him specifically. They wanted a warrior, someone who had proven himself in battle. Daniel was famous among both species. The Valorians respected strength, and he had shown plenty of it during the war. His commanding officer, Captain Nathan Price, had delivered the news personally. The captain was a large man with gray hair and a face like stone. He had placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder and said that he was sorry. He said that Daniel could refuse if he wanted. No one would force him, but Daniel saw the truth in the captain's eyes. If he refused, the peace treaty might fall apart. The war might start again. More people would die. So Daniel said yes. Now he stood before a mirror, wearing his dress uniform for the first time in years. The blue fabric felt strange against his skin. The metals on his chest felt heavy. He looked at his reflection and saw a man who was about to give up everything. The ceremony would take place on a neutral station orbiting Neptune. It was a massive structure built by both species during the peace talks. Neither human nor Valorian, it belonged to no one and everyone. Daniel boarded a transport ship that afternoon. He sat alone in the passenger section, watching the stars drift past the window. He thought about his family back on Earth. His mother had cried when she heard the news. His father had said nothing at all. His younger sister had hugged him and whispered that she was proud of him. He wondered if he would ever see them again. The station appeared. After 6 hours of travel, it was shaped like a giant wheel, spinning slowly against the blackness of space. Lights flickered along its surface like tiny stars. Ships from both species were docked along its edges. Human vessels on one side and Valorian vessels on the other. Daniel stepped off the transport and into a world he did not recognize. The air smelled different here, a mixture of human and alien. The walls were made of some strange metal that seemed to glow from within. Valorian guards stood at every corner, tall and silent and watching. A human officer met him at the dock. She was a young woman named Lieutenant Amy Cole, with red hair and nervous eyes. She led him through the winding corridors toward the ceremony hall. Along the way, she told him about his bride. Her name was Kira Velshan. She was the daughter of Supreme Commander Velshan, the leader of the Valorian military. She was considered one of the most important figures in their empire. Some said she was being punished by being forced to marry a human. Others said she had volunteered. No one knew the truth. Daniel listened without speaking. His heart beat faster with every step. He had faced enemy ships without fear. He had survived explosions and crashes and fights that should have killed him. But this was different. This was something he could not fight. The ceremony hall was a large circular room with high ceilings and walls of pure white. Hundreds of people filled the space. humans on one side and Valorians on the other. They did not mix. They did not speak to each other. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel walked to the center of the room and stood on a raised platform. His legs felt weak. His mouth was dry. He forced himself to stand straight and keep his face calm. Then he saw her. Kira Velshon entered from the opposite side of the room. She moved with slow, careful steps, her long robes flowing behind her like water. She was tall, even for a Valorian, nearly 7 feet. Her skin was the color of silver touched with blue. Her eyes shifted between shades of gray and purple as she walked. She was beautiful in a way that Daniel had not expected. Not human beautiful, but something else entirely. Something strange and cold and impossible to look away from. She reached the platform and stood across from him. Their eyes met for the first time. Daniel saw nothing in her gaze. No warmth. No fear. No curiosity. Just empty, endless cold. The ceremony was performed by officials from both species. They spoke words and languages Daniel did not understand. They pressed symbols onto documents that would bind two peoples together. They declared the marriage complete. Through it all, Kira did not speak. She did not smile. She did not look at Daniel again. When it was over, they were led to their new quarters aboard a diplomatic vessel. The rooms were large and comfortable, divided into 2 separate sleeping areas. Kira went immediately to her side and closed the door behind her. Daniel stood alone in the common area, looking around at the strange furniture and alien decorations. This was his life now. This cold, silent existence with a woman who saw him as nothing more than an obligation. He walked to the viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was everything he had known and loved. He wondered if he would ever feel at home again. Days passed. Then weeks. Kira spoke to him only when necessary. She answered his questions with short, clipped sentences. She ate her meals alone. She spent her time reading documents and sending messages to her people. Daniel tried to reach her. He asked about her homeworld. He asked about her family. He asked about her life before the war. She gave him nothing, but he noticed things. Small things that others might have missed. He noticed the way she flinched whenever a message arrived from her father. He noticed the way she stood apart from other Valorians, never quite fitting in. He noticed the way she sometimes stared at the stars with an expression that almost looked like sadness. One night, Daniel woke to a strange sound. He rose from his bed and walked quietly into the common area. The viewport was filled with the light of distant stars. Kira stood before it, her back to him. Her shoulders were shaking. When she turned around, Daniel saw something he never expected to see on a Valorian face. Silver tears ran down her blue cheeks. Her eyes, usually so empty, were filled with something that looked almost human. Pain. She saw him watching and quickly turned away. She wiped her face and straightened her posture. When she spoke, her voice was steady, as if nothing had happened. She told him to go back to sleep. Daniel did as she asked. But as he lay in the darkness, he could not stop thinking about what he had seen. There was something beneath that cold surface. Something hidden. Something real. And for the first time since his nightmare began, Daniel felt something other than despair. He felt curiosity. Daniel did not speak to Kira about what he had seen that night. He understood pride. He understood the need to suffer alone without anyone watching. So he said nothing and pretended. He had seen nothing, but everything changed after that moment. He began to leave small gifts for her. Nothing big or obvious, just little things that she might like. One morning, he left a cup of earth coffee on the table near her door. She had mentioned once, in one of her rare moments of conversation, that she found the smell interesting. The next day, the cup was empty. He left a data chip filled with human music. Old songs from Earth that his mother used to play when he was a child. Soft melodies and gentle voices singing about love and loss and hope that he found the chip plugged into her personal player a week later, when the station's climate control failed and the temperature dropped too low for Valorian comfort. He left a blanket from his homeworld outside her door. It was made of thick wool, colored deep blue like the oceans of Earth. That night, he saw her wrapped in it, staring out the viewport at the stars. She never thanked him. She never acknowledged the gifts directly. But she used them. She accepted them. And slowly, something began to change. Kira started spending more time in the common area. She would sit and read while Daniel worked on his reports. Sometimes she would ask him questions about human things. Simple questions at first. What did humans eat? How did they sleep? Why did they laugh so much? Daniel answered every question honestly. He told her about Earth, about his family, about the life he had left behind. He did not hide anything from her. He did not try to make himself seem better than he was. And in return, Kira began to share pieces of herself. She told him about Valoria, her homeworld. Not the official version that human intelligence had gathered. The real version. The truth that her people tried to hide. The Valorians were dying. A genetic plague had been spreading through their population for 3 generations. No one knew where it came from or how to stop it. It attacked their ability to have children. Fewer and fewer babies were born each year. Their population was shrinking, slowly but surely moving toward extinction. The war with humanity had been driven partly by this desperation. The Valorians needed new worlds. They needed new resources. They needed to find something, anything, that might save their species from disappearing forever. Daniel listened without interrupting. He saw the pain in Kira's eyes as she spoke. This was not easy for her. Valorians did not share weakness. They did not admit failure. But she trusted him enough to tell the truth, or at least part of the truth. As the weeks passed, Daniel noticed that something was still wrong. Kira's messages from her father came more frequently. Each time one arrived, her face grew darker. She would lock herself in her room for hours. Sometimes, Daniel heard sounds through the door that might have been crying. He wanted to ask her what was happening, but he knew she was not ready. So he waited. 3 months after their wedding. On a quiet evening, when the stars seemed brighter than usual, Kira came to sit beside him for the first time. Not across the room. Not at a safe distance. Right next to him. Close enough that he could feel the cold that always surrounded her species. Her hands were shaking. She told him that there was something else. Something she had not revealed. Something that could destroy everything. Daniel turned to face her. He saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind that came from knowing that the next words out of her mouth would change everything. She took a deep breath and began to speak. There was a faction within the Valorian High Council that did not want peace with humanity. They believed that humans were too dangerous to leave alive. They had seen what humans could do during the war. They had watched their ships burn and their soldiers die at human hands. These Valorians wanted to end the threat forever. They were planning a massive first strike that would destroy every human colony. They would burn Earth to ashes. They would kill every man, woman, and child until nothing remained. And they were using this marriage as cover. Daniel felt his blood turn to ice. His hands clenched into fists without him realizing it. His mind raced through the implications of what she was saying. Kira continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Her father, Supreme Commander Velshan, was the leader of this faction. He had arranged the marriage himself. He had chosen the neutral station specifically because it gave his spies access to human leadership. He was gathering information about human defenses, human weaknesses, human secrets, and Kira had been sent as one of those spies. Daniel stood up suddenly. His chair fell backward with a crash. His hand moved toward his hip, reaching for a weapon he no longer carried. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to run, to do something, but Kira did not move. She sat perfectly still, silver tears running down her face, waiting for whatever came next. She said that he could call the guards. He could have her arrested. He could tell everyone what she had revealed. She would not stop him. She would not resist. Daniel stared at her. His heart pounded in his chest. His thoughts were a storm of anger and fear and confusion. He asked her why she was telling him this. Why now? What did she want? Kira looked up at him. Her eyes, usually so cold and empty, were filled with something he had never seen before. Something that looked almost human. She said 3 words that changed everything. I chose you. Daniel did not understand. He asked her what that meant. Kira explained. The selection process for her human husband had not been random. The council had originally wanted her to marry Admiral Gregory Hart, the man who had designed the most devastating human attacks during the war. But Kira had manipulated the selection. She had studied human records for months. She had searched for someone different, someone special. She had chosen Daniel Carter because of something she had read in his file. During the Battle of Proxima Station, Daniel had refused to fire on a Valorian escape pod. The pod had been carrying wounded soldiers, enemies who would have died without help. His commanding officer had ordered him to destroy it. Military protocol demanded that he leave no survivors, but Daniel had let them go. He had been punished for it. His record had been marked with a note about disobedience. His fellow pilots had called him weak. Some had called him worse things, but Kira had seen it differently. She had seen something in that decision that her people did not have a word for. Mercy. Her species had evolved as hunters. They were cold and logical and efficient. They did not feel compassion. They did not understand kindness. Their language had 17 different words for duty and none for love. But Kira had always been different. She had read human books captured during the war. She had listened to human music. She had watched human recordings and wondered what it would feel like to laugh, to cry, to care about someone simply because you wanted to. When her father ordered her to become an instrument of genocide, something inside her had broken. She could not do it. She would not do it. So she had chosen Daniel. She had hoped that this strange human quality called compassion might be real. She had hoped that someone, somewhere, might actually care whether she lived or died. She was tired of being alone. Daniel stood in silence for a long moment. The weight of everything she had told him pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. This woman had come to destroy his people. She had been sent by monsters who wanted to murder billions, but she had chosen a different path. He sat back down slowly. He took her hand in his. Her skin was cool against his warmth. He told her that he did not trust her. Not yet, maybe not ever. He told her that she had been part of a plan to kill everyone he loved. He told her that forgiveness would not come easily or quickly, but he also told her something else. He told her that everyone deserved a chance to be better than their worst moment. Kira looked at him with eyes full of wonder and hope and fear. She asked him what he wanted to do. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. He said they would stop her father together, whatever it took. The days after Kira's confession were filled with planning and secrets. Daniel and Kira spent every waking moment preparing for what was to come. They talked in whispers. They met in places where no one could hear them. They trusted no one except each other. Daniel had many questions. He needed to understand everything if they were going to stop the Valorian plot. Kira told him everything she knew. The strike fleet was gathering in a hidden nebula, far from any human sensors. Over 200 warships, the largest Valorian force ever assembled. They carried weapons that could burn planets to ash. They had soldiers bred specifically for ground combat. They were ready to launch within 3 months. Her father had been planning this for years. The peace treaty was nothing but a lie. The marriage was nothing but a distraction. While humans celebrated the end of the war, the Valorians were preparing to finish what they had started. Daniel asked about the other council members. Did they all support this plan? Kira shook her head. The council was divided. Some wanted genuine peace. They believed that the Valorians could learn from humans, could find new ways to solve their genetic problems through cooperation rather than conquest. But they were afraid to speak against Supreme Commander Velshan. He was too powerful. Anyone who opposed him disappeared. Daniel thought about this information. He was just one man. Kira was just one woman. How could they possibly stop an entire fleet? But then he remembered something important. He was not completely alone. Captain Nathan Price had been his commanding officer for 5 years. The captain was a hard man, but he was also fair. He had defended Daniel after the Proxima Station incident. He had fought for Daniel when others wanted him removed from duty. More importantly, Captain Price hated the Valorians. He had lost his wife during the war. He would never trust them completely. If Daniel came to him with evidence of a secret attack, he would listen. The problem was getting that evidence. Kira said she could access her father's private communications. She had been given high-level clearance as part of her spy mission. But if she was caught, she would be executed immediately. Her father would show no mercy, not even to his own daughter. Daniel told her she did not have to do this. He told her that they could find another way. Kira looked at him with those strange silver eyes. She said that there was no other way. This was her responsibility. Her people were about to commit the greatest crime in history. She could not stand by and let it happen. For the first time, Daniel truly understood her. She was not doing this because she loved humanity. She was doing this because it was right. Because some things were more important than survival. Because even a Valorian could recognize evil when she saw it. He took her hands in his. He looked into her eyes and made her a promise. If they failed, they would fail together. If they died, they would die together. He would not let her face this alone. Something changed in Kira's face at that moment. The coldness that had always surrounded her seemed to melt away, just a little. Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile. She told him that she had never met anyone like him before. Among her people, individuals did not matter. Everyone existed to serve the Empire. Personal feelings were considered weakness. No one would ever sacrifice themselves for another. But humans were different. Daniel was different. She asked him why he was willing to risk everything for a woman who had been sent to destroy him. Daniel thought about the question carefully. He had asked himself the same thing many times since Kira's confession. Finally, he gave her an answer. He said that he had spent 7 years fighting a war he did not believe in. He had killed people who had never done anything to him personally. He had followed orders that made him sick to his stomach. He had watched friends die for reasons that no one could explain. When the war ended, he had felt empty, lost. He had thought that his life would never have meaning again. But now he had something worth fighting for. Not revenge. Not duty. Something better. Hope. If he and Kira could stop this attack, they could prove that peace was possible. They could show both species that the future did not have to be written in blood. They could be the beginning of something new. That was worth dying for. Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Valorian gesture, she explained. The most intimate sign of trust between two people. She had never shared it with anyone before. Daniel closed his eyes and felt the coolness of her skin against his. In that moment, something shifted between them. The wall that had separated them since their wedding finally came down. They were no longer strangers forced together by politics. They were partners, allies, maybe. Something more. The next few weeks were the most dangerous of their lives. Kira began accessing classified files whenever she could. She copied communications between her father and other council members. She documented ship movements, weapon deployments, attack plans. Every piece of information was stored in a hidden device that Daniel kept on his body at all times. Meanwhile, Daniel made contact with Captain Price through encrypted channels. He could not tell the captain everything yet. It was too dangerous. But he planted seeds of suspicion. He suggested that the Valorians might not be trustworthy. He asked the captain to keep the human fleet ready for anything. Captain Price was curious, but he did not push for details. He trusted Daniel. He began making quiet preparations in his own dot. As the weeks passed, Kira and Daniel grew closer. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood on Valoria, about the cold palace where she had grown up, about the father who had never once told her he loved her. He told her about Earth, about the ocean he had swum in as a boy, about the mother who had cried every time he left for deployment. They were so different. Their species had evolved on opposite sides of the galaxy. They should have had nothing in common, but they found something in each other that neither had expected. Understanding. One night, after a particularly long day of secret work, Kira asked Daniel a question she had been thinking about for months. She asked him what love felt like. Daniel did not answer right away. He thought about all the songs and stories and poems he had encountered throughout his life. He thought about his parents, still together after 40 years. He thought about the way his heart had felt when he first saw Kira crying at the viewport. He told her that love felt like fear and courage at the same time. It felt like wanting someone else's happiness more than your own. It felt like being willing to suffer just so another person would not have to. Kira listened carefully to every word. Then she nodded slowly, as if confirming something she had already suspected. She said that she thought she understood now. She said that she thought she might be starting to feel it. Daniel reached out and took her hand. He did not say anything. Some things did not need words. They sat together in the quiet darkness. Two people from different worlds, holding on to each other against the coming storm. They did not know what the future would bring. They did not know if their plan would work. They did not know if they would live to see tomorrow. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They had each other. And for now, that was enough. The plan was ready. Daniel had gathered enough evidence to prove the Valorian conspiracy. Communications, fleet positions, attack timelines. Everything was stored in a small device, hidden in his uniform. All he needed to do was deliver it to Captain Price. But the Valorians had spies everywhere. Someone had noticed Kira accessing classified files. Someone had tracked the encrypted messages leaving the diplomatic vessel. Someone had put the pieces together and reported to Supreme Commander VEL single quotes Sean. The kill squad arrived in the middle of the night cycle. Daniel woke to the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Not the soft steps of the diplomatic staff. These were heavy, purposeful, military. He knew that sound. He had heard it during the war. Death was coming. He jumped from his bed and grabbed the emergency weapon he had hidden beneath his mattress. It was a small energy pistol, weak compared to military-grade weapons, but it was all he had. He ran to Kira's door and pounded on it. She opened it immediately. Her eyes were wide with fear. She had heard the footsteps too. Daniel told her to stay behind him. He told her that no matter what happened, she should not surrender. Her father would not let her live after her betrayal. Death would be certain and painful. The main door exploded inward. 6 Valorian soldiers stormed into the room. They were elite assassins, bred for killing. Each one stood over 7 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in black armor that seemed to absorb the light. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. They did not speak. They did not give warnings. They simply attacked. The first soldier moved so fast that Daniel barely saw him. A blade flashed through the air, aimed at Daniel's throat. Daniel ducked just in time. The blade sliced through the wall behind him like it was made of paper. Daniel fired his pistol. The energy bolt hit the soldier in the chest, but barely slowed him down. The armor was too strong. The soldier kept coming. Daniel grabbed a chair and swung it with all his strength. The impact knocked the soldier off balance for just a moment. Daniel used that moment to fire 3 more shots at the soldier's unprotected face. The soldier fell, but 5 more remained. They spread out around the room, circling Daniel and Kira like predators surrounding their prey. Their movements were perfectly coordinated. They had done this many times before. Daniel knew he could not win this fight. These soldiers were faster than him, stronger than him, better trained than him. He was just a pilot. He had never been designed for close combat, but he was human. And humans did not give up. He charged at the nearest soldier with a scream of rage. The soldier was not expecting such a foolish attack. He hesitated for just a fraction of a second. That was enough. Daniel drove his shoulder into the soldier's midsection and pushed with every ounce of strength he had. The soldier stumbled backward and crashed into another assassin. Both fell to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Pain exploded through Daniel's back. Another soldier had struck him from behind. He felt something crack. Maybe a rib. Maybe more. He did not care. He spun around and fired his pistol point blank into the attacker's face. The soldier screamed and fell backward, clutching his destroyed eyes. 3 soldiers remained. They regrouped and attacked together. Daniel could not dodge all of them. A blade cut across his arm, opening a deep wound that immediately began pouring blood. A fist struck his ribs, making the earlier pain 10 times worse. A kick sent him flying across the room. He hit the wall hard and slid to the floor. His vision was blurry. His body was broken. He could barely breathe, but he could still see Kira standing behind him, frozen with terror. He forced himself to stand. The 3 soldiers stopped their advance. They stared at him with something that might have been confusion. No human should have been able to get up after the beating he had taken. His body should have given up long ago, but Daniel was not just any human. He was a man with something worth protecting. He raised his pistol with a shaking hand. Blood dripped from wounds all over his body. His left eye was swollen shut. He could feel broken bones grinding together with every movement. He told them that they would have to kill him to get to her. He told them that he would not stop fighting until his heart stopped beating. He told them that this was what it meant to be human. The soldiers looked at each other. Then they attacked again. Daniel fought like a man possessed. He blocked strikes that should have killed him. He landed blows that should have been impossible. He refused to fall no matter how many times they knocked him down. He killed. One more soldier with a lucky shot to the throat. He broke another soldier's knee with a desperate kick that cost him his last remaining strength, but the final soldier was too much. The blade pierced Daniel's chest just below his heart. He felt cold steel sliding between his ribs. The pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. His legs gave out beneath him. He fell to his knees, still holding his pistol, still facing the enemy. The soldier raised his blade for the final strike, and then the wall behind them exploded. Captain Nathan Price led the rescue team personally. A dozen human Marines poured through the breach, weapons blazing. The Valorian soldiers did not stand a chance. The last 3 assassins tried to flee. They did not get far. When the shooting stopped, Captain Price found Daniel still on his knees, barely conscious, covered in blood that was mostly his own. Kira was kneeling beside him. pressing her hands against his wounds, crying silver tears. The captain had seen many things during his years of service. He had seen heroes and cowards. He had seen acts of bravery and acts of desperation. But he had never seen anything like this. One man had fought 6 elite Valorian assassins. One man had held them off long enough for help to arrive. One man had refused to die. The captain ordered his medics to save Daniel's life. He told them to do whatever it took. He told them that this man was worth more than the entire fleet. Then he turned to Kira. The Valorian woman was still crying. Her hands were covered in Daniel's blood. She looked up at the captain with eyes full of grief and fear. She begged him to save Daniel. She said she would tell him everything. She said she would give him the evidence they had gathered. She said she would do anything he wanted. Just save him. Captain Price looked at her for a long moment. He had hated Valorians for years. He had blamed them for his wife's death. He had sworn that he would never trust one of them again. But this woman had clearly risked everything for Daniel. She was willing to betray her own people to save him. Maybe not all. Valorians were the same. He gave the order to bring Kira along to the medical bay. He told his soldiers to treat her as a guest, not a prisoner. In the medical bay, human doctors worked through the night to save Daniel's life. They repaired his punctured lung. They stopped the internal bleeding. They set his broken bones and stitched his torn flesh. Kira stayed by his side the entire time. She held his hand through every surgery. She refused to eat or sleep or leave his side even for a moment. She spoke to him in her native tongue, words she had never said to anyone before. She told him that she understood love now. She told him that he had shown her what it meant to care about someone more than yourself. She told him that she would spend the rest of her life trying to be worthy of what he had done for her. 3 days later, Daniel opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Kira's face, tear-stained and exhausted and beautiful. She smiled at him. A real smile, the first he had ever seen from her. She told him that he was an idiot. She told him that no one had ever done anything so stupid and so brave. She told him that she had been terrified of losing him. Daniel tried to laugh, but it hurt too much. Instead, he squeezed her hand weakly. He asked if they had won. Kira nodded. The evidence had been delivered. Captain Price was already coordinating with Human Command. The trap would be turned against the trappers. Daniel closed his eyes and smiled. They still had a long way to go. The war was not over yet. But for the first time, he believed they might actually win. The human fleet moved silently through the darkness of space. 200 warships, every vessel that could be spared from defense duties. They traveled without lights, without communications, without anything that might give away their position. Their target was the hidden nebula where the Valorian strike force was preparing to launch its attack on humanity. Daniel watched from the bridge of the flagship. He was still recovering from his wounds, but he had refused to stay behind. This was his fight. He needed to see it through to the end. Kira stood beside him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. She was no longer a prisoner or a spy or a reluctant bride. She was his partner in everything. Where he went, she went. Captain Nathan Price commanded the fleet from his chair in the center of the bridge. His face was hard, his eyes cold. He had spent years fighting the Valorians. He had lost people he loved to their weapons. Now he finally had a chance to end the threat forever. But this battle would be different from all the others. The human ships emerged from hiding just as the Valorian fleet was preparing to jump toward Earth. The surprise was complete. The enemy vessels were caught with their shields down and their weapons offline. It should have been a massacre, but Captain Price did not give the order to fire. Instead, he opened a communication channel to every ship in the Valorian fleet. He broadcast Daniel and Kira's evidence to every screen, every speaker, every device that could receive a signal. The recordings of Supreme Commander Velshin planning genocide. The documents showing the conspiracy. The truth that the Valorian people had been hidden from. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two fleets faced each other in the cold silence of space. Then Kira stepped forward. She asked Captain Price to let her speak. She said she had something to say to her people. The captain hesitated. He did not trust Valorians. He was not sure he ever would. But Daniel looked at him and nodded slowly. After everything they had been through, Daniel trusted Kira with his life. The captain opened the channel. Kira's voice echoed across both fleets. She spoke first in her native language, then in English so the humans could understand. She told her people about the conspiracy. She told them about her father's plan to murder billions of innocent people. She told them about the lies they had been fed since birth. The propaganda that painted humans as monsters who deserved to die. Then she told them about humanity. She described Daniel's kindness when she was nothing but a stranger. She described how he had left her small gifts and listened to her stories and treated her with respect even though she was his enemy. She described how he had fought 6 assassins to protect her, how he had refused to give up even when his body was broken. She told them about human art and music, about their stories of love and sacrifice and hope, about their strange ability to forgive even those who had hurt them deeply, about a species that had every reason to hate the Valorians, but chose instead to offer peace. She told them that humans had something the Valorians had lost long ago, a soul. Her people had evolved beyond emotion. They had removed weakness and compassion and love from their society. They thought it made them strong, but it had only made them empty. Humans were different. They felt things deeply. They cared about each other. They were willing to die for people they had never met. They were messy and chaotic and imperfect, and they were beautiful because of it. Kira finished her speech with a plea. She begged her people to choose a different path. She begged them to learn from humanity instead of destroying it. She begged them to find the souls they had lost. Silence followed her words. Then, one by one, Valorian ships began to power down their weapons. Captains and commanders, who had spent their lives following orders, suddenly found themselves questioning everything they had been taught. They looked at the evidence on their screens. They listened to the recordings of their supreme commander planning mass murder. They thought about Kira's words, and they chose differently. Supreme Commander Velshan screamed for his ships to attack. He threatened death to anyone who disobeyed. But his voice no longer carried the weight it once had. His authority was broken. His own officers arrested him on the bridge of his flagship. The battle ended without a single shot being fired. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The Valorian High Council was dissolved. New leaders emerged, ones who wanted genuine peace with humanity. They signed treaties that meant something. They opened their borders to human scientists and doctors who might help solve the genetic plague. Human and Valorian ships began working together for the first time in history. Joint patrols protected both species from pirates and threats. Trade routes opened between the two civilizations. Students traveled between worlds to learn from each other. It was not perfect. There were still people on both sides who hated and feared the other. Old wounds took time to heal. Trust had to be built slowly, one small step at a time, but the war was truly over. 1 year after the confrontation in the nebula, Daniel and Kira stood together on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station. The blue planet hung in the viewport like a jewel against the black velvet of space. Ships moved in and out of the docking bays, some human and some Valorian, working side by side. Kira had changed in the years since her broadcast. She smiled now, not the cold smile of Valorian formality, but real warmth that lit up her silver eyes. She laughed at Daniel's terrible jokes, even when they were not funny. She had learned to cry without shame and to embrace without hesitation. She had found her soul. Daniel had changed too. The anger that had filled him for so long was gone. He no longer saw enemies everywhere he looked. He had learned that forgiveness was not weakness. He had learned that love could grow in the strangest places. He had found something worth living for. They watched as the first Valorian cultural exchange vessel docked at the station. Diplomats and artists and scientists emerged, ready to share their knowledge with humanity. Human crowds gathered to greet them, curious rather than afraid. It was a small moment. Just a few hundred people meeting for the first time. But Daniel knew it was the beginning of something much larger. Two species that had nearly destroyed each other were learning to live together. Kira turned to him with a question in her eyes. She asked him if he regretted everything that had happened. The forced marriage, the danger, the pain. Would he change any of it if he could? Daniel thought about the question carefully. He thought about the night he had learned about his arranged marriage. He thought about the fear and anger he had felt. He thought about all the moments since then, the good and the bad, the terrible and the beautiful. He shook his head. He told her that being forced to marry her was the best order he had ever followed. Kira smiled that beautiful smile of hers. She leaned against him, her cool skin pressing against his warmth. She told him that she loved him. Daniel put his arm around her and pulled her close. He told her that he loved her too. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the future unfold before them. The stars seemed brighter than they had ever been. The universe seemed full of possibilities. Somewhere out there, two species were taking their first steps toward becoming something more than they had been. It would not be easy. There would be setbacks and failures and moments of doubt. Some people would never accept the changes. Old hatreds would die hard. But Daniel and Kira had proven something important. They had shown that enemies could become friends, that fear could become love, that the walls between species could come down if people were brave enough to try. They had shown what it meant to be human. Not perfect, not powerful, not superior in any way that could be measured. Just willing to hope, willing to trust, willing to love even when it hurt. That was the secret strength that the Valorians had never understood. That was the fire that burned in every human heart, and now that fire was spreading across the stars. Daniel smiled as he watched a Valorian child take the hand of a human child on the deck below. The two youngsters walked together toward the viewing window, pointing at the ships and laughing at something only they understood. It was a new world. It was their world. And it was just beginning.